We're really happy to have you here with the Women's Earth and Climate Action Network, or WECAN, to launch this important report that we're putting out today called The Gendered and Racial Impacts of the Fossil Fuel Industry in North America and Complicit Financial Institutions. My name is Osprey Oriolake, and I'm the founder and executive director of WECAN. And it's just really important that we're having this conversation today, and we thank you for taking time to be with us. We're also extremely honored to have with us a panel of very powerful women leaders from across the country here in the United States who will share their stories, their expertise, and their calls to action as we collectively demand an end of the era of fossil fuels. I also see that there are people from all over the world who have joined this call from South Africa, from Greece, from Kenya. So I did want to say that this report is specifically focused on the United States because some of the worst financial institutions and actors in the space are here, but all of the information really in the report relates to communities all over the world and certainly can be applied. So I just wanted to mention that for all of you who are outside of the United States, that we want to make this report available to you for your own contexts. Before I introduce our extraordinary leaders who are going to be sharing information with you, I want to offer some contextualizing comments about the report, the gendered and racial impacts of the fossil fuel industry in North America and the complicit financial institutions, so that we can really create a groundwork for their comments. And also to say that we're actually having this session today in the midst of the fact that there is a hurricane currently right now going on in the Gulf South in the United States, impacting communities that we have been close with and are some of the case studies we looked at in our report. So as we speak, the climate crisis is unfolding. I'm very thankful to have been one of the co-authors of this report, along with our excellent WECAN team, Mary Liz Estrada, Livia Charles, and Allison Fabrizio, who are an incredible group of researchers and writers, and I want to thank all of them for their contributions. This is our 4th annual edition of the report, and we have learned that it has been an important ongoing resource utilized by policymakers, advocates, activists, health professionals, academics, educators, students, and climate environmental organizations. And so to put our research into the most simple terms, just to get started, our findings show that the fossil fuel industry and the financial institutions backing them are literally killing us and killing frontline communities, in particular, women from historically marginalized communities. From rising cancer rates to escalating violence, our report details the numerous disproportionate health and safety risks that women are experiencing due to the fossil fuel extraction and infrastructure in their communities, which is also perpetuating Indigenous and human rights violations. The report explicitly exposes the role that banks, asset management firms, and insurance companies play in preserving and perpetuating negative gender and racial impacts. And we looked at 9 case studies, from the fracking fields in Kern County in California, to Cancer Alley in the Gulf South, to the Willow Project in the Western Arctic, and we could go on. The report spotlights Vanguard, BlackRock, Capital Group, JP Morgan Chase, Royal Bank of Canada, Bank of America, Citigroup, and Liberty Mutual as primary financiers of harmful fossil fuel projects within the case studies. And it's important to note that all of these financial institutions that I just named have voiced support for the Paris Climate Agreement and human rights. And this is through statements or by signing various international frameworks. Yet these same financial institutions continue to finance companies whose operations are disproportionately harming women and communities of color, while also violating Indigenous rights and furthering the climate crisis. So by examining peer-reviewed scientific articles, published news reports, as well as firsthand accounts from women in frontline communities who you're going to be hearing from, the report finds an indisputable connection between the fossil fuel industry's practices and negative impacts to African American, Black African diaspora peoples, Indigenous, Latina, and Chicanas, and low-income women's health, safety, and human rights in North America. Specifically, the report finds that fossil fuel-derived air, water, and soil pollution impacts women's fertility, mental health, and daily work and responsibilities. And the adverse effects from fossil fuel activity, including extraction, storage, and transportation of coal, oil, and gas, stem from the direct pollution of communities and through the fossil fuel companies play and the role that the companies play as the most significant contributors of industrial carbon dioxide and methane. And our research shows significant community impacts in each case study. And for right now, I just wanted to uplift 6 points that we've seen across all the case studies. First is that extraction and pollution are killing and harming women and children, specifically from Black, Indigenous, Brown, and low-income communities. Secondly, the outcomes of fossil fuel extraction, such as increased climate disasters and extreme heat, are also disproportionately impacting women's health in these communities. Thirdly, that extraction and pollution greatly impact women's role as caretakers for their families and communities. Fourth, the fossil fuel industry practices and resulting pollution have devastating impact on women's fertility and reproductive rights. And fifth, that fossil fuel development is directly linked to the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous girls and women, which we'll be talking about as well. And then lastly, for now, the proximity to fossil fuel extraction and development has been directly linked to negative impacts among expecting mothers and their children. And this is really an egregious list. I mean, it's one thing to talk about these things, but I will say that when we were working on this report, there were a lot of tears, a lot of grief, and a lot of outrage. These activities have to be stopped. And on top of this, scientists the world over have clearly stated that we have to end fossil fuel extraction to avert the worst impacts of the climate crisis. And finally, the report ends with explicit recommendations and demands advocating for financial institutions to immediately transition away from fossil fuels and instead invest in a just transition, community-led solutions, and clean regenerative energy. So we have solutions, but they need to be implemented, and we have to stop business as usual. Additionally, the report calls for immediate accountability, respect for Indigenous rights, proper due diligence processes in banks and other financial institutions, and that justice is implemented. Lastly, I want to say that I join the voices of my sisters across the country and the world calling for no more sacrifice zones and no more sacrifice people. We have to end the era of fossil fuels. And with that, please let me welcome our amazing panelists today that I'm so honored to have join us. We have with us Roshetta Osain, who is the founder of the Vessel Project of Louisiana and Gulf Fossil Finance Coordinator. We have Patricia Garcia Nelson, who is of the Oricaca tribes of Mexico and the Chichimeca. She is a Colorado fossil fuel just transition advocate for Green Latinos. We have Ms. Sharon Levine, founder of Rise St. James, and she's also the 2021 Goldman Prize winner. We have with us Casey Camp Hornick from the Ponca Nation. She is the Ponca Nation Environmental Ambassador, and we're very honored that she's also a WECAN board member and project coordinator. We have with us Rianne Goodrich, who is Bad River Ojibwe and a Wisconsin Department of Justice Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women Task Force member, and also a member of the Indigenous Women's Treaty Alliance, which WECAN is very honored to organize and facilitate. We have with us Antonia Juarez, who is an investigative journalist and author. And with us, we have with us Dr. Nemo Ojiaku, who's a medical doctor and an obstetrician gynecologist and works with Climate Health Now. So as you can see, this is really quite an incredible lineup of presenters and panelists that we have with us today. And I'm wondering if Roshetta is available. I'm just seeing if she's online to join us. And let me know, Roshetta, if you're available. And if not, we will begin with Patricia.
Hi, yes. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Yes, I apologize due to the weather in Louisiana. All of the flights were delayed. And so I am currently on a plane to DC, but I did want to get on here because I think that this call is so important to understand that this release of this report, like always, is a very important document that outlines what we're dealing with in communities and the steps we must take to move forward. I am Rashida Sibley Ozayan. I am the founder, director, and CEO of the Vessel Project of Louisiana. I live in a small town called Sulphur, Louisiana, that is surrounded by fossil fuel extractive industries. I am a mom of 6, and my children are dealing with health issues stemming from the pollution in the community. And so I'm always happy to see the findings of these reports that coincide with what we're dealing with and living through in our everyday lives. The women who are on here to speak are amazing speakers, and there's so much more that I can say. And I'm sorry that I have to be rushed, but as I always say, that the people the closest to the problem are the closest to the solution. And the people, the women who are on here to speak today are the ones who are living this crisis every day and have the solutions. This is how we move forward, coming to the table and having our solutions being utilized, having an equitable access, having resources, having funding to ensure that women like us and our children and the people that we are protecting and trying to save every single day, that our voices are heard. It starts with our storytelling. I'm so appreciative to Osprey for the book that she has written. The story is in our bones. And in order for us to tell this story, we have to be invited to events like this, because just the reports and the numbers and the science clearly aren't doing enough. It is hearing from people who are living this. I invite each of you to come to our communities in Louisiana, Southwest Louisiana, Cancer Alley, and see what we're dealing with. You may not be able to go today because many of those communities are being flooded right now due to Hurricane Francine. This is our everyday lives. This is what we're dealing with. Again, thank you all so much for having me. I'm excited about this report, and I'm excited to be on this call with all of you. And I'm so sorry that I have to leave so early. Thank you all again for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Rashida, and most especially want you to be safe and take care of yourself. That's the most important thing. And we love you and we appreciate how hard you are working and a leader in your community. And I want you to know that in our chat, we're putting information about you and your organization. So as you said, your voice, the work that you're doing can be supported. And that's for everyone to know who is joining this call, that we are going to be sharing all the information of all the leaders who are speaking, because direct support is needed from the communities on the ground, and especially these women leaders who are in fact on the front line with solutions and fighting the fight to really protect where they live and their communities. So we will also be sharing this out in a document after this webinar so that people have the opportunity to know more about each of these women. Rashida, we really love you and we wish you well, and we will be in touch with you soon. Thank you for joining us. I would now like to hand the floor to Patricia Garcia Nelson. Patricia, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And I feel like it's, we're meant to be here because my story starts in the same place where Rashida is living right now. She lives in Sulphur. I lived in Lake Charles, which is literally across the lake from where she lives. And my story begins when I was pregnant with my son and I'm sitting on top of the bridge and I just see this brown cloud and I was thinking, I can't raise my son here. And so I made the decision to move to Colorado, and that's eventually where I met Antonia here doing work. My son goes to Bella Romero Academy. We had a 24 well site approved behind my son's school, less than 700 miles from the playground. Our biggest concerns were that there would be emissions, leaks, that the company would go bankrupt. And we had also the concern that there would be explosions, which is something that has happened in Colorado. People have been killed in their own home. And so when I got this opportunity to work with WECAN on some other reports. I was just amazed by all the stories, and it looks like we're you know, really creating a network for women to come and be a part of this movement. And this report is just, it's proving what we already know. And I think a lot of us have spent so many years doing this work, and you know, thinking about, you know, like just listening to the 15-minute conversation, like y'all have kids, y'all are doing the work, and I just, I'm gonna get emotional. But you know, there's just so much, there's just so much that we have to sacrifice in this work, but it's so important, because if a lot of the times the people doing the work are women, and a lot of the times they're moms and grandmas, and it's just, you know, that in itself is something that really impacts our health. I was just talking to my therapist about how I was stressed this week and ways that I can manage that. And, you know, for women, it's always true, is stress is the silent killer, right? And so I think in addition to all the health impacts, we also forget about the mental health issues that come with doing this work. The amount of stress, and I tell people I don't have normal people problems. My concern is the Air Division going to approve a permit for the expansion of a pipeline terminal across the street from another school in Colorado? Or, you know, if I go to drop off my son at school today, am I going to see emissions coming off the site behind the school? And so I think that in itself is something that really impacts women. But then, you know, you have a circle, and then I always go back, it's always the moms, you know, it's always the moms that are asking for help. It's always the moms that are, you know, concerned because their son that goes to the same school as my son has lost 30 pounds, but nobody can tell her why. Or the teachers that teach at my son's school, that 4 of them had a miscarriage in the same like time frame. And, you know, now we have, this is the 3rd year where one of my kids' teachers has been diagnosed with cancer. And so, you know, we see these reports coming out, and I'm just really grateful for WECAN for putting this together, because like I said, they're everything that we've been saying for the longest time, like now we have it on paper. And so even more and more, we have more undeniable proof that this industry is creating a genocide for our communities. You know, the story of Bella Romero is that they came to our school because the majority of our students are Mexican, and the sentiment is still the same, that they don't care about our kids because they're Mexican. And so I'm really looking forward to work with y'all to make sure we get this information out and put pressure on these banks that they know what they're doing, and their bottom line is all about money, and ours isn't. So I think I always tell people we're not motivated by money, and so they can't buy us out. So thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to working and connecting with all of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Patricia. Really, really wonderful to hear from you. And yeah, it's also really emotional listening to you because of all that you are experiencing. As you say, you know, we really need to get accountability from these financial institutions who are, you know, allowing this. They're the ones who are backing these projects in your communities. Which is why we really wanted in the report to name names and call this out, because a lot of times I think people think about the climate crisis in the future or in these things that will happen. But the fact is the fossil fuel industry is killing people right now and has been for a really long time. This is not new. And so we need to take this evidence and really demand accountability from all the different actors that are engaged, because this has to stop. And also, as you brought up, you know, this is why we wanted to have a gendered and racial lens very explicitly. Let's really get down and talk about who is being impacted and who is picking up the pieces of their families' bodies and all the rest of it. So thank you for your comments. We really appreciate it and appreciate your leadership. I would now like to go to Ms. Sharon Levine. You have the floor, Sharon. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sharon Levine, and I'm the director and founder of a faith-based organization called Rise St. James. Rise St. James was formed in 2018 after our governor announced that a $9.4 billion industry for most of plastics would be built 1 mile from an elementary school, 2 miles from my home, right next to other industries that's already impacting us. When we found out about Formosa Plastics, it did something to us, to our community. So that's when we formed this organization and started to fight back. We have women in this area within the 5th district where we have 12 industries and 100 storage tanks. Women that had miscarriages, then they got pregnant again and had preemies. The air is so toxic until when you walk out your door, you can breathe that filthy, dirty air. And the water is so polluted. I have a friend, I had a miscarriage. I had my oldest daughter had a miscarriage. My other daughter, she don't know if she's going to have children because of all this pollution. I have people that have babies and they wind up with asthma. Some of our RISE members, babies, wind up with asthma. And these our Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality, they approve these industries to come in, and especially in my district. My district is the 5th district in St. James Parish. We have 7 districts. The 4th and the 5th districts are the ones that's the most impacted, but the 5th district is the worst because we have industries on top of industries next to people's homes. Birdland is sandwiched in by 2 industries, New Star and Marathon. They were sandwiched in for years. They didn't know why the women were having miscarriages. They didn't know why they were the one that was being so impacted. Well, I have some statistics right here in front of me. I'm going to read a few to you. In the last 4 years, LDEQ has allowed a total of 2,684 permitting actions in Louisiana. LDQ has approved 32 major source permitting actions in St. James Parish alone. A permitting action can be a new permit, a renewal, or a modification of an existing permit. We have industries that's already here and they want to add on. They ask to expand. We have to fight those people, and LDQ give them the okay to expand, to pollute us more. And it's heartbreaking for your neighbors to call you and tell you they have cancer. I have women right down the street from me going to take chemo. And when they go to Mary Bird Perkins Breast Center in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, when they find out that they are cancer-free, it's a relief. When they ring the bell, we all excited because they are cancer-free. I have a friend over not far from me. She had breast cancer, but she is a recoverer. She recovered from the breast cancer. We have so many women, just women alone. We have men with prostate cancer, colon cancer. Women, one of my other friends had liver cancer. When she found out she's in stage 4 liver cancer, she's fighting for her life. We have women that's on dialysis. We have men and women with diabetes. So much diabetes in this area. I didn't know we were overburdened with such illnesses. My sister-in-law died with breast cancer. All right, Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality authority to issue permits needs to be revoked due to their careless, negligent, inhumane management of an already overburdened community like St. James. Since the 1980s, the 85-mile stretch from New Orleans to Baton Rouge has been known as Cancer Alley. They nicknamed this place Cancer Alley because of the high rates of cancer. The name stemmed from the fact that the area resident has a 95% greater chance of developing cancer than the average American. That's awful. Cancer Alley residents described the impact on their health, including miscarriages, high-risk pregnancies, infertility, the poor health of newborns, respiratory illness, and cancer. Babies born with preemies, staying in the hospital for 6 months sometimes. The researchers found exceptionality elevated rates of low birth weight and preterm birth as much as triple the US average. These parts of Louisiana with the highest rates of adverse birth outcomes correspond to those with the worst air pollution, including areas within Cancer Alley. Look how long we've been breathing this air and drinking this filthy, dirty water before we found out we were drinking benzene. When I found out we were drinking benzene, you don't know what's in our bodies. We don't know how we're going to ever recover from all of this. We used to eat fish from the river. We were still eating it, not knowing they had cancer. I mean, they had benzene in the water. It's so much that we have found out since 2018 when we started Rise St. James. We were successful in winning a case against this industry that tried to come in Convent, Louisiana. It was called Wan Wan from China. We lobbied against those people and they are out. They backed up and they left. We fought against South Louisiana methanol. They wanted to renew their permit. Army Corps of Engineers told them to go back and redo it, so they pulled out. So Formosa is so stubborn. If we can get Citi and all of these other banks to denounce these industries, we wouldn't have to fight so hard and suffer even more. Because if Formosa Plastic comes to my community, we will not live. That's how much pollution they will emit into the air. 800 tons of greenhouse gases within 1 year. Benzene, formaldehyde, all that's going into the air and into our drinking water. Our Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality don't help us. But we as women, all of us can stand together against these polluters and against LDEQ and whoever is trying to poison us, because we are tired of being a sacrifice for these big polluters to make money. We are not going to sacrifice our lives anymore and for our babies and the pregnant women. So we're going to fight. And I'm glad to be on this panel today. I'm so glad you all invited me. Please invite me in the future. I am here to fight. And I thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sharon, for your incredible leadership and your courage. You know, you have been out there fighting these companies for a long time, as you said, and you've won and got them out of your community. And I really want to acknowledge and celebrate that, because I know how much work it is to do that. And you have campaigned and you have brought your community together and you have had victories. And we stand with you to not have Formosa come into your community. We know it's like a death sentence coming your way. And, you know, we have, you know, support for you and all of our solidarity to stop that project. And yeah, we need to go directly to the banks and other financial institutions who are financing these projects and tell them to stop. And I wanted to note and let people know that this report is going directly to the banks. You know, this is not going to go on a shelf. This is a advocacy tool, so we can put that right in the face of everybody who's involved in these projects. The report is, you know, 200 pages long, detailing the chemicals, detailing the harms, that, you know, we can go into, you know, the actual analysis and the technical details of what is actually going on. But thank you for your leadership, and the fight goes on. The fight goes on. It has to stop. Thank you for your words, and I would like to now hand the floor over to Casey Camp-Hornick. Casey, you have the floor. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Datia Judy with the Kepanka of the Mashtepanka, Oklahoma. My name is Judy. My true name, Casey Camp-Hornick, is my colonized name. There's so much that I'm hearing that echoes within the community that I live in. I live on a reservation in northern Oklahoma, where it's a red state that is invested in the fossil fuels so deeply that it's hard to separate the 39 tribes that are here and the problems that exist on virtually every single one because of the extractive industry. Particularly in our territory, we have ConocoPhillips 66 and a coal-fired generating plant right in the same territory as where we live. Virtually every person in my tribe has a family member or multiple family members that have cancer, that have asthma, that have autoimmune diseases. And we live in a state of PTSD because of all of the issues that we deal with right now. All of the things that are being talked about right here with reproductive rights, with the issues around how women's ability to come to term, children being born with autism, children being born with brain cancers, and women that have to try to find a way to make a living for these same people, because we only have Indian Health Services. And I know my own grandson, who has terrible, terrible, terrible asthma from the time he was a baby. And all of our children know to share their inhalers with each other. That's how bad it is. That when we tried to get him a doctor's appointment about a week ago, they told us that they're booked up until December. That's the state of the people here in Ponca territory and of the natives around us. Our women folks primarily have to find work in the service industry, in cafes, in hotels, in whatever service industry that they're able to, the very minimum amount, because the racism that is here is also just way through the roof, or else all of these things wouldn't be in Indigenous territories. They're not up there in those zip codes on the northern end of Ponca City, where all of the rich folks are, where the people who run ConocoPhillips and these mass murderers, these serial killers, are being financed by banks that don't care and don't care about their own legacy, because what's happening here will happen everywhere. Right now, we're dealing with a form of man camps that I wasn't even aware of. I knew that there were turnarounds and that our whole town would fill up with people coming in to do the turnaround work. In other words, to beef up what's already going on, to get exchange jobs. We're living on a network of pipelines, methane gas in the air from all the fracking going on. That's totally unchecked, uncared for. ODEQ doesn't care because its board is all oil people. Whenever we have these turnarounds, we have to tell our kids, our teenage kids, our young men, our women folks, our men folks have to escort people into town because of the violence, because of the drugs that come with these people who come on a turnaround. Every single camping grounds here is filled up with men that are looking for women, who are selling dope on the side to the same women. These are the same women who are trying to clean the motels that these men work in. And they're trying to create a ring of prostitution. We have missing and murdered women to the extent that we can't even keep track. And it's not just the women. It is the impact on their children as well, because those drugs flood into our schools, they flood into our reservations, and we have not got the law enforcement or the ability to enforce the law against non-Indigenous people in our territory. We're in a situation right now that is being fed by the greediest top 1% of all the population, who don't care and don't look at the issues that are happening here on the ground. If we're talking about how to solve this, it has to be with a total absolute moratorium on any more fracking, on any more injection wells, on any more drilling. There is a cleanup that has to happen of all of the wells in our territory too, that is just beyond any conscionable action that should be going on right now. The banks that finance these people, the insurance people that finance these people, virtually are complicit in the environmental genocide of the Ponca Nation and of all the Indigenous people that I know. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Casey, for your powerful testimony words and what's happening in your community. And, you know, to to also really state what, Casey is bringing forward, this direct link between missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls directly because of fossil fuel extraction and the man camps, these camps that come in explicitly to do the drilling, and how those man camps are set up. They're not monitored, they operate illegally, and they come in and they go after the Indigenous women. And as Casey said, there's not proper legal recourse and no one's being held accountable. So there's a direct link through this violence against the Indigenous women and the fossil fuel workers. And we go into detail to prove this in the report, with all of the case studies and the research behind that. It's very important to understand that, along with the Indigenous rights violations that occur from these fossil fuel companies operating without free, prior, and informed consent on Indigenous lands. So this is very critical to understand all these different intersectional crises that are going on. And also to say, this is not, let's just be very clear, this is not happening in white communities, wealthy white communities. Yes, some in low income white communities, but this is why we're focusing on what we're calling sacrifice zones, sacrifice zip codes. We would not be having this kind of fossil fuel build out in wealthy white communities. And we should just call it for what it is, because this is the kind of racism and colonization that is impacting our world, impacting women's health, impacting all of our communities. And the injustice of it has to be called out. And so this is why it's so important that we hear these stories and hear from frontline women to understand actually what is going on, and not have this be off to the side somewhere. And it should be in the mainstream news on a regular basis, so people understand how this has to change. And with that, I'm going to hand the floor to Renan Goodrich. It's so good to have you with us, Renan. You have the floor, please.
Bonjour nende we magna dug. Shogate ea shikindigo anishinabe moen. Renan Goodrich shogana shimon. Mushkazibing nandun chipa. Hi everyone, my name is Renan Goodrich. In English, I'm Bad River tribal member. I'm an elder in my family and in my community. I work with in the awareness campaign, the intersection of environmental injustice and missing and murdered Indigenous relatives. Currently, I'm in the Twin Ports area, focusing in Superior. I work also in Duluth, and to bring awareness to the ongoing epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women and families and relatives that are directly impacted by this ongoing epidemic. Most importantly, connecting the dots that are all included in this ongoing epidemic. My work started back in 2010 or 2014 down in the cities of Minneapolis, St. Paul. And I've relocated to the Twin Ports area to specifically work on connecting those dots that are contributing factors to this ongoing epidemic and violence towards Indigenous peoples with the MMIWR movement up here in Superior and the Duluth, the Twin Ports area. This particular land base has a long history of violence and of trafficking, sexual assault, and we are working to connect the dots. We've been very successful with our campaigns down in the cities. This year was our 10th year of the memorial marches down in Minneapolis. We've been very successful with getting support and help with our advocacy and our awareness from the nonprofit organizations that have picked it up and helped to bring awareness to this epidemic. Nonprofits in domestic violence, sexual assault, the trafficking, to connect those dots underneath the common umbrella of MMIW. Following the work from our sisters up in Canada, and more recently here in the past 5 years, we're building those strong connections to how the extraction industry impacts, and learning from our matriarchs, women that are on the front lines here with the climate justice, environmental justice, to really connect all those dots and of what are the contributing factors to the MMIW epidemic. And this report, we're so honored to be working with you ladies, and to be a part of this powerful efforts here with this report. Just lays out the violence, the broad spectrum of violence that is the core to the chief contributing factors of the MMIW movement. You know, we think about that trafficking and the domestic violence, sexual assault. Yes, we know that, but there's something deeper, and this report lays it out. It's powerful. I invite readers, support the public. Please take a look at this report and how it's laid out, and learn a lot from this report and how it is all connected to this broad spectrum of violence that is historical, deeply rooted in racism, colonialism here, directly impacting our peoples, our Indigenous peoples, peoples of color, non-white communities that are, and low-income communities that are impacted by share and shared. And it was also shared this 1%, 2% of the folks on this planet that are targeting our communities and making us disposable human beings, making our lands disposable, and turning our water and our lands into wastelands. So this report is powerful. There's a foundation for research we could draw from this report, and it really helps to educate the public at large of this broad spectrum of violence that we live in. I do believe that we as women, matriarchs, grandmothers, mothers, daughters, sisters, aunties, we are the ones that are directly impacted. We are the matriarchs in our families and our community. We hold our families together. We need to be leading on this work, and I'm so proud to be involved and supported here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to have you with us, Renan, and for all your leadership and hard work that you're doing in your community. And I also wanted to acknowledge Renan in her leadership on the Indigenous Women's Treaty Alliance, because right now there's an active fight that we are supporting them in to stop Line 5, which is a pipeline going through her territories. And it's a terrible project through Enbridge, which also produced Line 3 and in Minnesota, which some of you might be familiar with. This pipeline, Line 5, goes through Wisconsin and Michigan directly on the Bad River tribe. And we can put a link to go into more detail, but this is actually a pipeline we can stop
Yes,
by mentioning it. And
this is,
go ahead.
the line 5 kind of picks up from the work 2 and is calling over, we're calling over those line 3 water protectors that are our neighbors here in Minnesota to please come over and help support this resistance against this line 5. It's trespassing on my home reservation of Bad River, and it's been illegally trespassing there for 10 years. And we do have a court order for it to be evicted within the next 3 years. However, the weather is very unstable, and there is a history of flooding there in Bad River. So the immediate imminent threat that we have is of an oil spill, that pipe breaking that is right there next to our the Bad River. And the imminent catastrophe is if the oil is spilled in that Bad River, that'll travel down into our watershed and into the Great Lakes area. So we have this huge imminent threat of a catastrophe that here with the line 5 on the Bad River Reservation, we are fighting to stop line 5, to have it evicted and removed. And we're also, with the support of WECAN, we've been able to get those petitions and to call out what is going on here, and to also call in support for the tribe to resist this reroute that is currently in process with Enbridge. And I'm hoping that Osprey can help share a little bit more about that, about the resistance that we have of the reroute. That's current, that's ongoing. This has been pretty intense here in Minnesota and Wisconsin for the past several years. And it's coming to a head. We're hoping with the in the courts, but we are currently asking for the Army Corps of Engineer and not to allow those permits to occur. And this is with the Enbridge corporations. And also, you know, we have those financiers that are supporting these efforts, and we know where that comes from too. That comes from that 2% of the world's population belonging to these billionaires, threatening to make our ancestral homeland, you know, contaminated and into a wasteland. We are dependent upon our wild rice, our medicines that grow there on the earth, for our subsistence. And so this is a threat to our very existence here on Bad River, being able to eat the food and drink the water. But it's also a threat to our a cultural genocidal threat, because, you know, I'm in an urban setting, but over 50% of our tribal members live in an urban setting. So we know what it feels like to be disconnected already from our homeland. And that when we are so directly impacted by this violence, we are dependent upon the earth and our water and our plants and our communities for healing. And that was the one thing I wanted to bring up is that we need our lands and our community and our tribal ancestral homelands to maintain our identity as Indigenous peoples and nations. But we need this land and our water for our healing.
Thank you. Yeah.
Chimigwech.
Thank you so much, Renan, for sharing all that with us. It's so important to understand that the destruction of the land is a genocide to Indigenous peoples and what you're fighting. And we will continue, of course, to support you and work with you. And we're going to put into the chat all the information about what is going on with Line 5 so people can support that resistance. And let's work together that pipeline never happens. So thank you very, very much, Renan. Really appreciate your leadership and your good words here. And I'd like to now hand the floor over to Antonia Juhas. Antonia, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Osprey. And I have basically spent the better part of 15 years being gifted with the generosity of the women who have just spoken before us in teaching me and entrusting me with their stories. Sharon, Casey, Rochetta, Patricia, Rayanne, Osprey. These are the women who taught me what I know about fossil fuels and about storytelling and the necessity of bringing those stories and the learning and the teachings and the solutions to as broad an audience as possible to hope to support that frontline incredible activity and to help bring about meaningful change. And WECAN has been one of the most amazing organizations providing this incredible link between research, advocacy, activism, outreach, and linking women and supporting women in all of our work all around the world, and continuously putting out this critical and important research, but directly tying it to the work that is happening on the ground and the answers and the solutions that are being put forward that need to be supported to address the research and those harms that are being identified. And I think what we've heard, so far today is such a critical, real life depiction of what you're also able to capture, Osprey, in writing and in reports. And so thank you for having me. Thank you for putting out a new version of this incredible research. It's critically important, necessary pieces of the puzzle of how we create change, the documentation, the hard research. People learn and are moved and are keen to be activists and be engaged through all sorts of different paths that lead people to feel like they have a part and a role to play in helping to create change. And we're seeing all of those different methods of places where people can provide support and also know the necessity of being able to raise their own voices and lead and who we can support and follow. I'm an investigative journalist. I have had the incredible opportunity and pleasure of meeting and learning from and supporting women on the front lines of fossil fuel harm and leading movements against that harm for the better part of 2 decades. I've been able to share that research and writing and those stories in books, in research documents, and in articles for media, from everyone from the New York Times to Rolling Stone to Ms. to The Nation to The Advocate and many others. One of the things that I have found over the 2 decades that I've been doing this work is that women's stories and questions around the unique impacts on women are generally not asked. And I have had to struggle in my work to say that these are the questions that need to be asked. These are the stories that need to be centered. And these are unique opportunities for solution. And I still have to struggle in that work, and I'm sure that everyone does, in getting research and research dollars to women at universities and people at universities who want to research women's health, the impacts of fossil fuels on women, on women's reproductive health. This is a new, this is an area of harm that women living on the front lines have identified for 150 years since fossil fuels began. but it is an area of publishable research that is brand new. And even I think that many women on the front lines also aren't accustomed to being asked about the maternal, reproductive, and newborn health harms from outsiders. And to see the value in both what those harms are and the documented harms, what are the causes, what are the solutions? And we are seeing that change. And the women on this call are the reason for that. WECAN is one of the reasons for that. And this new body of research has been finally emerging. And what this body of research is documenting is that the chemicals involved in all stages of fossil fuel operations, the pollution that those operations generate, also the light pollution, the sound pollution, the air pollution, the water pollution, have a broad host of harms, but have a unique particular harm to reproductive health. Harm the ability to get pregnant, to maintain pregnancies, to have a healthy pregnancy, and the development of the fetus and the child, and the ability to bring a pregnancy to term. So documentation of difficulty in getting pregnant, but also miscarriages, stillbirths. And one of the great opportunities I had most recently, I recently, after 2 years, left Human Rights Watch as the senior researcher on fossil fuels and conducted a year-long investigation on the human rights extreme toll of the concentration of fossil fuel and petrochemical operations where Sharon lives in Cancer Alley, including with Sharon and her family. And we were able to present in that research new findings by researchers at Tulane University, Kimberly Terrell, Maeve Wallace, and Gianna St. Julian, where they documented that those parts of Louisiana, and this was entirely new research, no one had let them do this before. They wanted to, but no one would give them the money or the opportunity to do it. And they got the money and opportunity themselves. This was not something that Human Rights Watch provided. I was just able to publish the findings. Was that in those areas of Louisiana with the worst industrial air pollution, as Sharon shared, they found that preterm and low birth weights were as high as 2.5 to 3 times the national average, holding, of course, everything else constant, right? The most important contributing factor was that pollution. And then we found that the primary source of that pollution is the fossil fuel and petrochemical industry and those unique chemicals. And so the answer is that people should not be exposed, anyone, to these harmful operations in any form, whether it's the light or the sound or the pollution. And of course, the pollution from these operations is the primary contributor to the climate crisis, which of course presents a whole nother host of unique risks and harms and a deathly toll to women. And that the answer is not, as sometimes these questions get put, that women need to do something different, right? Women need to find a solution. They need to figure out somewhere else where they can live or something else that they can do. No, of course, the answer is that these operations have to cease. The banks and financial institutions that support them, the governments that give them a green light, the companies that make excuses, and the myth that this somehow isn't not only killing people, but having a monstrous financial, economic, social, human rights toll that can be solved. All the women who have spoken today have presented solutions, opportunities for action. And because of the hard work that Sharon has led, that Casey has led, that Rian have led, Rochetta, Patricia, there has been change. We have seen new regulations put into place that directly target the ability of fossil fuel and petrochemical operations to release these chemicals, requiring them to reduce them. That's the first step. Tighten the noose, right? Reduce, restrict, rein in, then replace. get rid of. And their work is yielding tangible change with a great deal more to answer. But also, as Sharon is saying, and I'll just end it here, because I used to live in New Orleans, and I still get the live texts on my phone for taking precautions for the fact that there's hurricanes and storms happening, and I'm getting the live notice as well while I'm sitting here in Colorado. And one of the most recent ones was a positive one, which is that the community lighthouses are operating, and community lighthouses are localized, renewable, sustainable energy locations where communities can go and get energy and electricity provided by localized, renewable, sustainable, equitably distributed, community-supported, renewable energy. And they have energy and security right now for communities. And that's happening as we speak. So I want to thank Osprey and WECAN for your incredible work, the incredible resource that you continue to provide, and thank you all for allowing me to speak today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Antonia, and thank you for your years and years of dedication in this space to expose the fossil fuel industry and to do the research and to be really strong in this world of advocacy so we can collectively make this transition. Thank you so much for joining us and for your incredible years and years of dedication and journalism on this topic. And last but not least, I'd like to hand the floor to Dr. Naomi Ojiaku, who also reviewed the report, which we are extremely thankful for. And we felt it was very important, not that we need all the proof in the world, we have it from the women, but it's really good to hear from the medical professionals who are dealing with this and understand this at a deep, deep level and dedicate their lives to keeping us healthy. So we really honor you as a doctor, your expertise and your knowledge, and please take the floor.
Great. Thank you for having me. First of all, I just want to say it's an honor to be among this amazing group of women. I was able to review this document, and I remember going through some of the testimony of the women that are now here, and I was just wowed and amazed. And now to be in this forum in which I can actually hear from you all directly, it's just one of those once in a lifetime opportunities to see those who are actually in the communities and making a difference and kind of highlighting these issues. As the last speaker spoke, Antonia mentioned, we've known that these health harms have existed in our communities for years, for decades, for 150 years. It's just now that we're actually getting the scientific evidence to buttress that, which is a positive, but it's also honestly shameful that it's just now that we're acknowledging it and paying attention to it. Just to introduce myself again, my name is Dr. Ojiaku. I'm an OBGYN based here in Sacramento, California. I'm also a member of the statewide leadership team for Climate Health Now. Climate Health Now is a nonprofit organization that seeks to mobilize and organize members of the California health community to advocate for equitable climate action. When we say California health community, it includes physicians, it includes nurses, midwives, it includes patient advocates, it includes patients themselves, those who are interested in the overall health of our communities. Just to I'm going to be very brief since we're kind of over time, but I just wanted to briefly review just some of the things that were brought up in the actual report. In terms of the health harms brought about by the fossil fuel industry. The report goes into it in excellent detail, in extensive detail, but we know that there is extensive literature regarding the health impacts of the fossil fuel industry. It's well documented. We're no longer at that point where there's an association of the products or the effects of the fossil fuel industry with health harm. the extensiveness and the consistency of the literature has lent us the ability to say that it's causal. There is a direct relationship between the emissions, the byproducts of the fossil fuel industry, and the health harms that are enumerated in this report. Of course, those are the mechanism of those health harms are through the air pollution that is a result of these industries. We're talking about pollutants such as benzene, formaldehyde, particulate matter, nitrous oxide, VOCs, and other known carcinogens. We're talking about water contamination, direct water contamination of these at these sites. Another thing was noise pollution, as was brought up earlier, in terms of its effects on our mental health, on our cardiovascular health as well. The strongest body of literature, the one that seems to be most consistent, is in regards to the effects of the fossil fuel industry on perinatal health harms. We have seen direct links between these living in proximity to oil and gas drilling sites, to mining sites, and relationships between living in those areas and low birth weight, or having a small for gestational age infant. There have been direct linkages between living within these sites and increased rates of preterm birth, as was mentioned earlier, miscarriages and stillbirth. We're seeing in some communities we're seeing a higher risk or a higher percentage compared to the background of congenital anomalies such as neural tube defects, heart defects in babies. Not only that, we're also seeing an increased prevalence of high-risk pregnancies, particularly hypertensive disorders of pregnancy, which is of serious concern, because hypertensive disorders of pregnancy are one of the major drivers of maternal mortality in this country. Also, there's the relationship between the products that are being emitted by these industries and gestational diabetes as well, which has consequences not only for the pregnancy currently, but we also know that women who have gestational diabetes during the pregnancy are more likely to present with diabetes, frank diabetes, later on in life. Beyond some of the effects that we see during pregnancy, we also are aware of other reproductive health harms, primarily because of the products that are being emitted from these industries. We're seeing reduced fertility. We're seeing endocrine disrupting chemicals that are leading to miscarriages. Also, lower age of puberty, which has which can have an effect on future reproductive health and also future risk of reproductive cancers as well. Other health harms that we're seeing among women is we know that there is a predominance of depression and anxiety among women, and mental health in these communities. There is documented evidence that when you live in these communities that are close to these fossil fuel industries, you have a higher risk of depression, you have a higher risk of anxiety, owing to not only the products that are being emitted, but also, as has been mentioned by the previous speakers, the social implications of being next to these industries, the various man camps, etc. And of course, as has been talked about in much detail, is the relationship to other types of non-reproductive cancers, such as leukemia and lymphoma. One of the reason why this report is so important is because not only does it highlight the health harms, but also is part of this growing body of work that when we're talking about health inequities, we need to move away from what can the individual do? What can the individual patient do? What are the behaviors that the individual has that has contributed to some of these health inequities? We need to move away from those questions, and we need to start talking about what are the things in their communities? What are the aspects of their environment that are fueling, that are driving some of these health inequities? How do we ensure that there are policies in place, that we are organizing towards ensuring healthy spaces, healthy places, so as to eliminate these health inequities? So I am very thankful for the opportunity to be able to review this report, and also thankful for again, for the women who have lent their voices, their time, so have sacrificed in order to highlight these issues and bring us, members of the health community, to the awareness of how these industries are basically tearing apart our communities, our women, our children, etc. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ajiaku, for supporting the report and for your analysis that you shared with us just now with the details and how much we are also very dependent and in relationship with you as the medical professionals to help us get the knowledge and information that we need to do this research properly. So we are very thankful to be collaborating with you and other health professionals so we can really bring forward this issue in a really strong and powerful documented way. I know we've gone over time. I just want to make a few comments, and what I'm going to do is give the final floor to Sharon and Casey and Renan, each to give you like a little 1-minute lightning round to close up, because I know we've gone over time. But before I do that, I just wanted to say that the report's available. We'll have the link in the chat. We'll be sharing it on social media and our newsletters. And to understand that the outline of the report goes through, you know, these different case studies. There's 9 case studies that we go through across the United States, some of the worst cases, highlighting and giving voice, particularly to the frontline women who live there, who you're hearing from today, which we're so honored by, going through the health impacts and going through the deep research of the medical research, and then naming the companies who are doing the harms, and then naming the financial institutions who are backing it. I know it's quite comprehensive. It's a big, you know, it's a big lot of information to take on, but we wanted to really have this full comprehension of the picture so that advocates, policymakers, and others can really grab this report and use it to fight in your community where you have everything you need, from the health impacts to the actors engaged. And then last but not least, we have a set of recommendations where we are pulling forward what can be done. So we don't leave the report with just all the problems, which are essential to highlight, but also a set of recommendations about what the banks can do, what the asset management firms can do, what the insurance companies can do. A whole list of recommendations about why they should be divesting, where they should be pulling their money out. Why are they not adhering to basic human rights and Indigenous rights? Why are they not listening to these health reports? How they can do better due diligence. These are things we're demanding and calling for the banks to do. And then also, on another note, we give space to steps forward, all the incredible solutions that women from these communities are leading around bringing local democratized energy solutions that are equitable to their communities, how they can have clean water, how we can respect traditional ecological knowledge in Indigenous communities. We have solutions. They're quite abundant, and women are leading the way with these solutions. And what we need to do is, on the one hand, stop these bad actors from killing everyone, and on the other hand, really presenting the diverse array of visions and policy frameworks and on-the-ground solutions that are already there, that we need to listen to the earth, listen to the women, and listen to this leadership. And so, you know, I really wanted to also leave us on a note of understanding that while this horrific activity is going on that has to be stopped, we also have a way through, a path forward that a lot of these women are also leading. And so this is what we want to present to the financial institutions, is that they can divest from these harms and invest in community-led solutions, women-led solutions that have proven to work and are ready to go. And this is the big transition and struggle that we're in. And I just invite everyone to be a part of this big movement of moving away from extraction and destruction to a place of harmony with nature, caring equitably for our communities, and especially lifting up Black and Brown Indigenous women who are leading the way. And with that, I'm going to hand the floor over to first Sharon and then Casey and Renan, and just give you like a minute to close out. Thank you so much. And Sharon, the floor is yours.
Okay, I would just like to share something that I thought about. I'm in an article with the man, I forgot his name. We did this a couple of years ago, and the name of it, We Are Plastic People Now. And when you stop and think about all the plastics that's in the ocean, that's in everywhere we go, in our bottles that we drink water, if we can stop making so much plastics, that's one solution. These industries that are here for most of plastics, that's plastic. They want to make money, but use us as a sacrifice to make that profit. So one thing I think, cut down on the plastics. Some people say we can't do it all abrupt, but we as women can do anything.
Right.
That if we get together, we can do anything. So we need to start with that. Form a campaign we can start speaking about the plastics. Our babies are born. Plastic is in my blood. I had my blood tested. I had plastic in it. And a lot of you do too. So we need to start off with a campaign against so many single-use plastics. Let's start with that first, then go from there. And also target our politicians, our local politicians that's approving these industries to come into our neighborhoods to poison us. Vote them out. Someone in office that will help us to survive, us to live, us to breathe clean air, drink clean water. So we have the power, we can do it. And I'm ready. If you all are ready, I'm ready. I'm ready to get on board.
Yes.
We're ready and we're with you. And thank
Yes,
you for
Jimmy
leading the way.
Gwynn.
Yes. Casey.
I'm ready, Sharon. So plastic and politicians gone. I would like to also to bring up rights of nature. Within our Ponca territory, we have created statutes around recognizing the rights of nature. And of course, as human beings, we are part of nature. And the rights of the rivers as well, because without those other living things, without the water, we cannot live. We can't grow, by the way, food within this territory that we're living, that organic food within, I believe, close to a 15-mile radius of where we live. We need to stop the pesticides, which are also part of everything around me with this. So with WECAN, we have an earthen lodge, which is another form of housing that is very viable, and WECAN was instrumental in helping us to create the first earthen lodge that's been over 150 years. And now we're working on a food sovereignty thing because we're far enough away out here in the country from the industry. And we know that natural seeds will actually clean our Mother Earth. And those are the things that we need to be concentrated on. Wanted to make sure that we talk about Indigenous just transitions, because as we transition away from the fossil fuels, how do Indigenous peoples who can't afford things like the electric cars or the kind of energy for a windmill for a local home in the country or a small community, how do we have these banks and other financial industries look at ways to support people on the ground who can't afford the transition into clean energy in a healthy way? And I stand in solidarity. The next thing I'm going to say is the urgency of where we are right now in history. This has to be cared for right now. I believe in direct, nonviolent action. Let's get in those streets, folks.
Thank you, Casey. Thank you for all those really important directives. We hear you and we stand with you. Thank you so much. And we'll give the word now to Renan to close us out.
I want to say, Chimigwich, ladies and you powerful women, matriarchs, leading in your communities and your strength to your families and keeping your family safe and close to you. I would say Jimmy Glitch for this awesome work here, for helping to provide us with these tools that we need for advocacy, education, and to amplify those frontline work, those frontline women. I'll just say Jimmy Glitch WECAN for that. And then also to speak a little bit for the water and to and the earth that we need. For many tribal nations and also our sister Sharon spoke of it too, that our communities, we don't have that option to sometimes not, we don't have the option to move. You know, if someone says, well, why don't you just move? Well, many nations and peoples, we don't have the option just to move. And it wouldn't be an appropriate expectation to ask us to move, especially if it's our ancestral homelands. But it's our water, and it's our home, our homelands with the plants, and that is our medicine, our identity. But it's our healing that we need that water. So I'm gonna just say, please put your tobacco out and put your prayers out there. The water is a spirit. It is alive, and it is what keeps us alive. And to take good care of you. And Jimmy Glitch, everyone.
Thank you so much, Renan, for reminding of us of caring for the waters and the earth and where we live. So again, I want to thank everyone for joining us and for the leadership of all of the frontline women, especially who this report is really dedicated to, and your families and your lands. We will be sharing this report out, and this is just the beginning. We will be going to the banks with this and the financial institutions to share this information, because we need a result. We need things to change. We need things to be transformed in the way that has been discussed on this call today. And I want to thank everyone who has listened in. We will be sharing this on our social media platforms so we can share the incredible words that were spoken today with all of our communities. And we are working in solidarity. We women are working together.
Yes.
And we are going to end the era of fossil fuels and bring in a just transition that is equitable for people and planet. I love you all so deeply, and thank you for everything. And we will continue. Thank you, everyone.
Jimmy Glitch, everyone.
Thank
Jimmy
you.
Glitch.
Thank you.
Weebnaha. Love you all.
Love you.
Love you too.
Love you back.